Hello everybody, so as I promised in a previous video, I'm going to do a video now all about the crucifixion of Jesus of Nazareth and explaining why I believe that the crucifixion of Jesus of Nazareth was an elaborate prank on his stag weekend. To understand this narrative, we really have to go through the whole of the New Testament and the works of Jesus Christ and his miracles, and we need to look at the miracles from a perspective in which they can be rationalized, and we've got to somehow suck away any kind of supernatural element from our explanation of the miracles. So, I mean, what do the miracles include? Things like turning water into wine, feeding the 5,000, the raising of Lazarus, and I guess the crucifixion itself counts as a miracle, the healing of the sick and so on. So, just for instance, we might take turning water into wine, say. When it's the wedding at Cana, Jesus turns water into wine. He takes a ewer, right, a pot of old stagnant wine, and combines it with water, right, to make the wine that's old and stagnant more palatable to guests. And this is a problem of translation, really, or mistranslation, or poor writing in ancient Greek on the part of the Gospel writers. Since the Gospels are written in Greek, that's the original language in which they're written, but they're written by people writing in a second language, i.e. the writers of the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke and John, who weren't terribly fluent in Greek. And I think the best explanation for that particular miracle is the combination of water with wine, rather than snapping his fingers and turning a ewer of water into wine, right? So they've got this wine left over that's old and stagnant. He combines it with water, which is a tradition borrowed from Greece. And I'm imagining that Jesus is this quite well-travelled, well-educated carpenter dude who's been sent away with the money he was given at birth to receive an education in Greece. So he's learned the art of rhetoric in this process, the art of public speaking, and was probably quite funny as well. He's probably quite a comedic character, because if he's speaking to audiences of 5,000 people at all, he must have been pretty entertaining, which is another sort of clue, I think, to the character of Jesus of Nazareth. And he, at the feeding of the 5,000, at the address to 5,000 people, did he literally just feed them 2 fish and 5 loaves, is it? And that fed the whole of the 5,000 people? Or is it more like he had friends who are fishermen, so he had an abundant supply of fish and was having a special offer on 2 fish and 5 loaves? Or is it a case that sort of charlatanry has taken place in the eventual writing down of these stories, and that it's been misrepresented from what it really was in the original text? And you can see like healing of lepers as well as him exposing charlatans. Maybe they just got a bit of something caked to their feet that looks like leprosy, and he's washing the feet of the lepers and so on to expose charlatans. Maybe that's been going on as well. Various of the healing miracle stories, I think the poisoning of the fig tree, he could have done that with salt water. He could have also been armed with that knowledge from his education in Greece or his education in Egypt, wherever he was educated, right, somewhere in the Hellenic or Roman Hellenic world, if you like. So and the raising of Lazarus is the big clue, I think, to the resurrection of Jesus Christ. I think that particular story, the only way he could have pulled that off is to have gotten Lazarus in on it. So Lazarus needs to be pretending to be dead, gets put in the tomb for 3 days, presumptively without food or water, but may have had a small secret supply of water on him just to keep him alive for 3 days, and then is doing this kind of big joke, right, this big act that the horrible little old man who they all wanted to be dead re-emerges from the tomb and surprises everybody, right, who were like haggling after his inheritance or whatever it was. And that's the butt of the joke there. And and it's not funny when you have to explain a joke, is it? But my conviction when it comes to the crucifixion of Jesus, my conviction is that given the time of year, for one thing, that this happened over Passover in the Jewish calendar, so it's very unlikely, I think, that he would have been able to motivate many people to engage in a revolution at that period on the Jewish calendar. I think because it's a sacred time in Judaism, it's a time of festivity and celebration at that point in history. Lots of merrymaking and drinking would have been going on and so on in the streets, and no one wants us to really ruin Passover with a revolution, right? So I don't think it's that at all. I think it's pageantry on the part of Jesus, and I think he's having a wedding at the same time. I think he's probably getting married to Mary Magdalene at the same time. So during all this, and he rides into town on an ass, and all the crowds are throwing palm fronds before his feet because he's this great celebrated public figure, this great entertainer or dignitary, and goes to the temple and talks to the Pharisees and so on. Does it throw the moneylenders out of the temple or whatever? And that's all going on at the same time. And Judas takes money for dobbing in Christ. But then again, I'm just tempted to think of this issue of Judas with the money. Why would the Roman authorities, or the Pharisees and the Romans combined, why would they need Judas Iscariot to point out who Jesus of Nazareth is? Because Jesus of Nazareth at this point is one of the most famous men in the country. So they don't need to give him the silver. They can do it without giving him the silver at all. And this is like a big insight into the character of Judas, I think, because he is famously the most trusting disciple, is he not? He's the biggest idiot, the biggest dolt among them. And he's been suckered into believing that Christ is fomenting a revolution in Jerusalem. This is how it goes, I think. And that, he's been sort of tossed the money, and they're, making a fool of him. They're making a fool of him being the guy who would sell out his mate, and he'd sell out his mate cheaply as well, for a mere 30 bits of silver, when it's Jesus of Nazareth starting a revolution. Surely he could get some gold out of the Roman and Palestinian authorities at the time, if he had a mind to, right? And then I imagine, as Christ is being crucified, and I imagine he's probably hopped up on opium and so on while he's being crucified. He's being hopped up on opium so he can take the pain of the nails through the feet and the hands and so on, which is totally survivable, by the way. The crucifixion of Jesus of Nazareth needn't have killed him. If you recall the Revenant, that movie about the tracker and outdoorsman Hugh Glass in the United States in the 19th century, Hugh Glass got mauled by a bear and had his throat cut, and extremely deep lacerations in his back, numerous bones broken, and left for dead in the American wilderness, and buried alive, and shuffled through the snow for 6 weeks, navigating by starlight over 200 kilometres to the nearest settlement, and that didn't kill him. Christ was only on the cross for about 6 hours, and and it wouldn't have killed him in any case. I don't think his injuries were serious enough to cause him to be killed. Stabbed with the spear in the side. Didn't say he was stabbed in the heart, it said he was stabbed in the side. And I think they meant in the side as well, i.e. in the spleen, more like, not the heart. And I think armed with the anatomy knowledge, which was very developed at that point in history, the Romans a Roman legionary could have identified the spleen on the body and accurately stabbed Christ in the spleen. And that needn't have killed him, and they may well have been able to perform a splenectomy with their surgical techniques. And he was put in a hermetically sealed, more like operating theatre for 3 days while they operated on him and allowed him to recover. 3 days later, he rose from the dead, but he wasn't dead to begin with, or he looked very dead when he was brought down from the cross, but in fact wasn't. Then has the wedding. Yeah, and this is how it breaks down, I think. And Judas Iscariot, while the crucifixion was going on, he's terrified out of his wits because he thinks he's going to be next. And the disciples drag him to the city gates. This is what I'm imagining. Take the money off of him, and leave it. The scoundrel who'd betray his friend and all this sort of thing, lying outside the city gates, and they just chuck a bit of old rope at his feet that might never take his weight anyway. And they're trying to convince Judas to commit suicide because that's funny for them on a stag weekend. They think that that's going to be the centerpiece of Christ's stag. And I love this idea. I love this idea that the crucifixion was a stag weekend prank. And it had everyone involved in it. All the authorities were involved in orchestrating this, setting it up, having Judas as the butt of the joke, and Judas is the only person in Jerusalem at the time who thinks that Christ's trying to start a revolution or something like this. And I see that as the most likely interpretation of the New Testament. And I don't see anything supernatural going on there at all. Just Roman medicine at work to create the illusion of someone being punished brutally, trying to start a fake revolution on a stag weekend. And it's all on a stag weekend, and it's all a prank with Judas as the butt of the prank. And I like that idea, and I just thought I'd share that with you today. And hopefully you'll share this around and like it, because I think it's a great idea worth sharing. So thank you everyone for watching. Bye, love you guys.